Paris, the final show of one of the most respected menswear designers in history, the most fashion-literate room in the world. And on Travis Scott's wrist, a watch designed for women, Pastel, Marshmallow-colored, crown and pushers set with pink rubies. He wore it because he wanted to. Nobody in that room questioned it, and the watch world spent the following week writing about what that decision says about who Travis Scott actually is as a collector. That single wrist choice tells you more about this collection than any price tag will. Most celebrity watch collections are built from the same references: the Submariner, the Royal Oak, the Nautilus in standard steel. Travis Scott's collection contains exactly none of those. Every piece he owns is either one of one, limited to fewer than 30 examples, co-designed specifically for him, or chosen specifically because no other man in hip-hop owns it. The total value, over $15 million, more than the median price of a Beverly Hills mansion, and not a single conventional watch among them. Today, we are going inside Travis Scott's watch collection, the one that is worth more than a Beverly Hills mansion, that contains a one-of-one ceramic Audemars Piguet built specifically for his brand, a Richard Mille with a complication so unusual it was only ever made 30 times in history, and a Patek Philippe with an enamel dial that took a single craftsperson months to paint. 5 watches, $15 million, and not one of them looks like anything anyone else is wearing. Stay locked in until the end, because we are breaking down the single most unusual watch in this collection. Not the most expensive, the most unusual. A Richard Mille tourbillon, produced in a run of 30 examples worldwide, containing a complication so specific and so rare that most of the people who own the most expensive watches in the world have never seen one in person. Travis Scott owns one. He wore it to a studio session, and the watch world has been talking about it ever since. 5 watches, 5 completely different philosophies, starting with the piece that proves Travis Scott's collection is not about brand loyalty, it is about being the only person in the room wearing something nobody else could have acquired. Watch 1. The Cactus Jack X, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar, the only one in the world. Every serious watch collector eventually confronts the same question. Once you can afford any production watch available, what comes next? The answer for collectors operating at the highest level is customization, pieces that cannot be purchased through any boutique, any waitlist, or any amount of patience because they were built for a specific person and do not exist for anyone else. The Cactus Jack Brown Ceramic Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar is Travis Scott's answer to that question. It is an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, the most culturally significant sports watch of the past 50 years, built in a brown ceramic case that matches the Cactus Jack color identity and exists in a single example on Earth. One watch. His. The standard Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. Perpetual Calendar retails at over $120,000, already one of the most complex and desired references in AP's current catalog. Combining a perpetual calendar complication that accounts for the varying length of every month, including leap years, housed inside the Royal Oak's iconic octagonal bezel. Travis Scott owns that reference in standard black ceramic, which he has been photographed wearing on multiple occasions. He also owns the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar open-worked in black ceramic, the skeletonized version, where the movement is visible through the dial. And then there is the Cactus Jack Brown Ceramic One-of-One, a commission so specific that it carries no standard market value because there is no market for something that exists in a single example. The financial concept behind the AP collaboration is the same concept that runs through every Travis Scott brand move: cultural equity conversion, the transformation of artistic and commercial credibility into access to categories that money alone cannot purchase. Audemars Piguet does not build one-of-one bespoke references for every celebrity who can write the check. They build them for individuals whose association with the brand generates the kind of cultural conversation that the brand's own marketing budget could not replicate. Travis Scott, Wearing a Cactus Jack Brown AP Royal Oak at Paris Fashion Week is worth more to Audemars Piguet's visibility in the streetwear and music community than any advertising campaign they could have produced. The watch is the exchange, and Travis Scott received the only one that will ever exist. Most collectors spend years trying to acquire a single AP Royal Oak at retail. Travis Scott owns 3 variants of the perpetual calendar alone: the standard black ceramic, the open-worked black ceramic, and the one-of-one brown ceramic that Audemars Piguet built specifically for him. The progression from the first to the third is the progression from collector to collaborator, and the collaborator version is the only one that cannot be taken from him by any amount of money anyone else might offer. It does not exist for sale. It was never made for sale. It was made for him. Watch 2, the Richard Mille RM69 Erotic Tourbillon 30 pieces, 1 Oracle, $1.18 million. Richard Mille makes watches that cost more than houses. They are worn by Formula One drivers at 200 miles per hour and by tennis players serving at over 100 miles per hour because the engineering inside them can withstand the kind of physical forces that would destroy any other movement on the market. Travis Scott's Richard Mille is not that watch. Travis Scott's Richard Mille is the one with the Oracle complication, 3 small rotating cylinders at the top of the dial that, when engaged, display a rotating sequence of characters. The watch is called the RM69 Erotic Tourbillon. 30 were made. It retails when it can be found at over $1 million, and Travis Scott wore it to a studio session. The RM69 was produced in a run of 30 examples in red gold, combining Richard Mille's signature skeletonized tourbillon movement with the Oracle complication, a mechanism using 3 rotating cylinders at 12 o'clock that display an unconventional message when activated. It is a watch that takes one of the most technically demanding complications in horology, the flying tourbillon, and pairs it with a complication so playful and so unusual that it confuses almost everyone who sees it for the first time. 30 were made. One of them belongs to Travis Scott. He paid over $1 million for a watch that, when people ask him what it does, requires a specific explanation that no standard watch enthusiast has ever prepared to give. Richard Mille occupies a unique position in the watch market. It is simultaneously the most technically advanced and the most aggressively expensive watch brand in active production, and it has built that position entirely on the principle that scarcity plus engineering plus the right wrists creates a commercial flywheel that no traditional watchmaker can replicate. The RM69 is the most unusual Richard Mille ever produced, not because of the tourbillon, which Richard Mille makes in multiple references, but because of the Oracle complication, which exists in no other watch by any manufacturer at any price. Travis Scott owning one of the 30 examples is the specific kind of acquisition that defines a collection as genuinely serious. Not a collector who buys what is available, but a collector who pursues what is singular. The status flex of the RM69 Erotic Tourbillon is not that it costs over $1 million. There are dozens of watches in Travis Scott's collection that cost as much. It is that he wore it to a studio session, not to a gala, not to a red carpet, to a room where the work happens, a watch that 30 people in the world own, worn to the place where music gets made, because Travis Scott does not change his wrist based on the formality of the room. He wears what he wants, where he wants, when he wants. That approach, wearing the right watch to the wrong room on purpose, is the entire collecting philosophy compressed into a single wrist choice. Watch 3, the Richard Mille RM07-03. Marshmallow, a women's watch worn by a man at Hermes. In January 2026, Travis Scott attended Véronique Nichanian's final Hermes menswear show wearing a watch that is designed according to Richard Mille's own catalog classification for women. The RM07-03 Marshmallow is a smaller cased Richard Mille with a pastel dial layered in green, pink, and yellow, the color palette of the suite it is named after, and crown and pushers set with pink rubies. The case is sized closer to what the watch industry calls a lady's watch. Travis Scott wore it to the most important menswear show of the Paris season, and the room's collective reaction was not confusion. It was recognition that a man secure enough in his own aesthetic to wear whatever he finds interesting regardless of how it is marketed is operating on a completely different level of style confidence than everyone else present. The RM07-03 Marshmallow is part of the Richard Mille Bon Bon collection, a range that the brand introduced in 2019 as a deliberate departure from the motorsport and athletic performance narrative that defines the rest of its catalog. The Marshmallow is playful, pastel, and sized for a smaller wrist. None of that stopped Travis Scott. He bought it. He wore it to one of the most scrutinized fashion events in the calendar. And when the watch world registered that the man in the front row at Hermes was wearing a women's Richard Mille, the conversation it generated was worth more to both his personal brand and to Richard Mille's cultural positioning than any standard press release could have produced. The pattern across both of Travis Scott's Richard Mille acquisitions, the RM69 Erotic Tourbillon and the RM07-03 Marshmallow, is the same pattern that runs through his car collection, his fashion collaborations, and his approach to music. He identifies the references that exist at the periphery of what a brand has done, the pieces that the mainstream of the collector community overlooks or categorizes incorrectly, and he acquires them before the conversation catches up. The RM69 was dismissed by many collectors as a novelty piece. The RM07-03 was dismissed as a women's watch. Travis Scott owns both of them, has been photographed in both of them in significant public contexts, and has used both of them to generate cultural conversations that the conventional Richard Mille references in other collectors' garages cannot produce. The ultimate status flex of the RM07-03 Marshmallow is the room it was worn in. Hermes Menswear, Veronique Nichanian's final show, the most emotionally significant moment in the brand's fashion calendar in years. Travis Scott sat in the front row, wore a women's Richard Mille because he thought it looked right, and in doing so generated a conversation across the watch, fashion, and music communities simultaneously that no conventional men's watch could have produced. He did not wear the watch for attention. He wore it because he wanted to. The attention followed anyway. That is the collecting philosophy in its purest form. Watch 4. The Patek Philippe World. Time 5131G, the quietest watch in the collection. In a collection that contains a one-of-one ceramic AP, a 30-piece Richard Mille tourbillon, and a fully diamond-set Nautilus, the Patek Philippe World, Time 5131G might be the most overlooked piece. It does not shout. It does not ice out. It does not have a complication that requires explanation. What it has is an enamel dial, specifically a cloisonné enamel map of the world, where the blue of the oceans was hand-painted by a single craftsperson using techniques that have remained unchanged for centuries, a process that can take months to complete and that no machine can replicate. Of all the watches in this collection, the 5131G is the most difficult to produce. It is just not obvious about it. The Patek Philippe World Time 5131G displays all 24 world time zones simultaneously through a rotating city disk mechanism. A practical complication for someone whose schedule spans multiple continents, which Travis Scott's does. But the dial is the watch. The cloisonné enamel map of the Northern Hemisphere is produced using a technique where fine gold wires are bent into the shapes of the continents and oceans, the spaces between them filled with enamel paste in multiple colors, fired in a kiln at high temperature and then polished flat. A cycle repeated multiple times until the depth and luminosity of the enamel is complete. The number of craftspeople capable of producing a cloisonné dial at Patek Philippe's standard is small. The number of hours required per dial is significant. The result is a watch that looks simple from 3 feet away and reveals its depth only to someone who stops and looks closely. In Travis Scott's collection, it is the piece that rewards the most patient observer. The world Time 5131G sits at the intersection of two things that define the most serious Patek Philippe collecting. The World Time complication, which Patek has been producing since 1939 and which carries the brand's deepest horological heritage, and the cloisonné enamel dial, which represents the most labor-intensive surface treatment in watchmaking. Owning the 5131G demonstrates a specific kind of horological literacy, an understanding that the most interesting Patek Philippe watches are not necessarily the most complicated ones, but the ones that carry the longest institutional history and the most difficult to replicate finishing. In a collection that otherwise reads as bold and maximalist, the 5131G is the piece that signals depth. It is Travis Scott saying, "I know what this is, and I know why it matters." The Patek Philippe world, Time 5131G, does not photograph as dramatically as the iced Nautilus. It does not generate the immediate recognition of the AP Royal Oak. It does not carry the narrative of the RM69's Oracle complication. What it does is confirm something about the collector that no flashier piece can communicate: that the collection was built with knowledge, not just money. You do not own a Cloisonné World Time Patek Philippe because a jeweler told you it was expensive. You own it because you studied the catalog, understood the heritage of the reference, and sought out the version that rewards the most careful attention. That is a different kind of wealth, and it is the kind that the 5131G was built to recognize. Watch 5. The Patek Philippe 5719. Fully iced Nautilus, the maximalist statement. The Patek Philippe Nautilus is the most desired watch in modern horology. Its waiting list at authorized dealers has reached years in some markets. Its secondary market premium has at times exceeded 10 times retail, and it was designed by Gerald Genta in 1976 to prove that a steel sports watch could command a luxury price, a point so definitively proven that the reference has become the primary symbol of high net worth watch collecting in the 21st century. Travis Scott owns the version where every single surface has been set with diamonds: white gold case, diamond set bezel, diamond set bracelet, diamond set dial. The 5719 is the Nautilus at maximum volume, and in Travis Scott's collection, it is the piece that makes the most noise, while the 5131G makes the least. The Patek Philippe 5719 is the Nautilus in its most maximalist interpretation, every standard surface of the watch reset in diamonds, transforming a design built on the power of its silhouette into an object where the silhouette is almost entirely obscured by stones. The white gold case and bracelet are fully paved. The dial is set. At the market peak in 2022, examples of this reference traded at approximately 2 million euros. The current secondary market value sits between $1 and $2 million depending on provenance and condition. It is a watch that multiple celebrities own. Post Malone, Drake, and others have all been photographed with the same reference. In Travis Scott's collection, it is the one piece he shares with other collectors. Everything else he owns alone. The presence of both the 5131G and the 5719 in the same collection is the clearest possible statement of the range of Travis Scott's horological taste. One is a cloisonné enamel map watch that reveals its depth only to people who look closely. The other is a fully diamond-set Nautilus that announces itself before anyone in the room has looked at anything. Most collectors choose a register. They are either restraint collectors or maximalist collectors. Travis Scott collects across the entire spectrum simultaneously. The 5131G and the 5719 are not contradictions. They are proof that the collection was built by someone who understands every register of the catalog and who refuses to limit himself to one. $15 million in watches, no conventional references, no production Rolexes, no standard AP Royal Oaks, no steel sports watches that appear on 1,000 other wrists, a one-of-one ceramic AP built for his brand, a 30-piece Richard Mille tourbillon with a complication that exists in no other watch, a women's Richard Mille worn to the front row of a men's fashion show, a hand-painted enamel world time that took months to produce, and a fully diamond-set Nautilus that proves he also knows how to turn the volume up all the way when the moment calls for it. Travis Scott did not build a watch collection. He built an argument that the most interesting wrist in hip-hop belongs to someone who studies the catalog, ignores the categories, and buys whatever he finds genuinely compelling. And at $15 million, the argument is very difficult to dispute. A women's Richard Mille at the Hermès show, a 30-piece tourbillon worn to a studio session, a cloisonné enamel Patek that rewards the people who look closely, a one-of-one ceramic Royal Oak that cannot be purchased at any price, and a fully iced Nautilus that proves he also knows when maximum volume is the correct answer. $15 million, more than a Beverly Hills mansion. Built not from a shopping list, but from genuine curiosity about what the watch industry has made at its most unusual, its most limited, and its most technically demanding. So tell us in the comments, which piece hits hardest? The Cactus Jack APE, the only one in the world built for him alone? The RM69 Erotic Tourbillon 30 made, the Oracle Complication worn to a studio session? Or the RM07-03 Marshmallow, a women's watch worn to the front row at Hermès because he wanted to? Drop it below right now.